Hi, everyone. Welcome to this Q&A. My name is Chris Shaw. I'm the Vice President of Global Marketing at NTT Research. And I'm here with Dr. Joe Alexander, Distinguished Scientist at NTT Research. Before we get into it, I'll give you a real quick background. NTT Research is a fundamental research institution located in Silicon Valley. We've been here for just under a year. It'll actually be a year, July 8th. We are part of NTT Group, which is a global information technology company based out of Japan. We do quite a bit of research in Japan, and we opened up NTT Research last year. We have 3 labs. One is working in the area of physics and informatics, so think quantum computing. We have a lab working in the area of cryptography and blockchain, so new encryption technologies. And finally, we have our MEI Lab, which is medical informatics, and that's where Dr. Alexander works. Just a little background, in opening last year, we really wanted to find a way to tell the story of what basic fundamental research means. So we're sort of like the R in R&D. So you're not going to see, a new app coming out of NTT Research. This is more groundbreaking fundamental work that when these ideas come to fruition, they tend to be rather earth-changing. So our mission at NTT Research is to upgrade reality. So to tell that story, we did a short film, which I encourage you all to see. And you can go to ntt-research.com and you'll see it on the website. It was directed by Academy Award-winning cinematographer Janusz Kaminski. He's worked with Steven Spielberg for almost all of his films. So if you've seen Steven Spielberg movies, you've seen Janusz's work. And he wanted to work with us and help tell that story and fundamentally show what it means to come up with discoveries that create an entirely new world. So think the world before vaccinations and the world after vaccinations. Think about air travel or the internet. And the work that we're doing at NTT Research, we expect to do the same kind of fundamental shift in the way we live our lives and to truly upgrade the lives that we live. And Dr. Alexander is working on some of those areas right now that I like to say I'm one of a few people at NTT Research that doesn't have a PhD. Well, Dr. Alexander has a PhD and an MD, so I'll just let him tell the stories here. So Joe, what are you working on in the lab?
Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you so much for this opportunity and time. As you noted, I belong to a group called Medical and Health Informatics. Let me say that the goal of medical informatics is to ensure that there's access to critical information necessary to take care of patients at the precise time and at the very place that information is needed for medical decisions. So it gets to the heart of the patient-physician relationship. Whereas health informatics concerns acquisition, storage, and retrieval, and also use of healthcare information so that it can aid as a tool for collaboration among the various healthcare individuals that would take care of a given patient. It links information technology, communications, and healthcare to improve quality and safety of patient care. Now, our mission is to upgrade reality, as the theme goes, by supplementing or enhancing our real-world data or big data through use of innovations that take advantage of some of the highly complex technical tools and skills that we have. Some of these are predictive analytics and Internet of Things. Now, I'll give an example of a project that we're working on now, which is called the Biodigital Twin Initiative. Now, from a purely healthcare perspective, a biodigital twin is a virtual representation of an individual or an electronic replica, if you will, but not just of superficial things. It represents all that is known or that can be understood or alluded to in terms of a person's physiology, an individual's pathophysiology. Any kind of omics data should be part of this that you would have. We call it multi-omics, metabolomics, proteomics, and so forth. Anything about the patient's behaviors, lifestyle, risk, All of these types of data feed into this type of biodigital twin. In order to be able to manage these various data types, then we have to build a modeling simulation platform that's very sophisticated. Now, all of this works toward the goal of improving and predicting a patient's health and performance over their lifetimes. That's the goal. Now, we'll begin by first building a cardiovascular digital twin, where we'll make use of sensors and wearable technologies and information from the patient's records. Again, trying to make assessments about patient-specific issues regarding cardiovascular wellness, and also make, ultimately, predictions about cardiovascular events that patient may ultimately witness or experience, things such as heart failure. There will be additional organ systems that will be added on over time. Now, we have a couple of other things going on in the lab currently that have to do with the development of nano and micro-fabricated sensor technologies. We have some information technologies that involve digital signal processing of EKGs, phonocardiograms, and even voice and speech signatures to be able to get some information about health status. And all of these things will work to empower early detection, intervention, monitoring of disease progression. And while we collect all this information and feed it into the biodigital twin, then that biodigital twin becomes continuously optimized to match that particular patient. And so as that biodigital twin becomes optimized, then it becomes a better tool to use to continually improve the patient's care out in the real world. So that's the project. That's the theme in a nutshell, Chris.
As always, wow. So essentially you're starting with the heart, right? And
yes.
Okay. So what is it that that sort of brought you into this field? I mean, I know, you've got your PhD and you've got an MD, but what brought you to this area, and then ultimately, what drew you to NTT Research? Why did you come here?
That's a very good question, and it turns out that the heart is relevant to some of this decision making. Well, first of all, I started out poor in Alabama during the civil rights movement growing up, not knowing that I could go to college. But I had these two wonderful teachers. One is chemistry, which will explain my major, and another was mathematics, who brought a professor from Auburn University, which was nearby. His name was Dr. Hirth. He came to me, he said, "Look here, Alexander, look, I'm going to give you the ball, but I give you the ball, you got to run with it. You got to run with it." And so with an enthusiastic coach like him, I went to Auburn University, studied chemical engineering, which is the discipline he represented. And but one summer I was working for an oil company, and lightning struck the plant, and I was in a hot oil explosion, which landed me in the Baltimore City Hospital burn unit, which is serviced by Johns Hopkins. And that got me interested in Hopkins and interested in medicine. Went back, finished chemical engineering, and ended up at Johns Hopkins initially in just the MD program. And then I discovered biomedical engineering. And the thought was, what better way for an engineer to understand medicine than biomedical engineering? And so I decided on an MD PhD in biomedical engineering. Graduated, did a couple of postdocs, one in New York, one in Fukuoka, Japan. Took a faculty position at Vanderbilt, where I was for a period before going into industry for about 20 years, pharmaceutical industry at Merck and Pfizer. And throughout, I was very excited about modeling and simulation, which explains why the biodigital twin is so exciting, because it's kind of the ultimate in the biomedical engineering representation or manifestation of modeling and simulation. I had been doing it for a number of years at Pfizer, but it wasn't the main focus of of my role, at least at Big Pharma. And so I had an opportunity to come out, and I came out really because I knew Dr. Atamoike, who was hiring. He invited me, and I felt I must go. And so I came, And I was very delighted to hear about this biodigital twin from Gomi-san. And when I heard that, I thought, well, how soon can I come? Because again, that was my dream, and it was perfectly aligned with my dream. And also, what was appealing to me, I have to confess, was that I would be allowed the freedom to think. Whereas in the pharmaceutical industry, I had needed to deliver within 6 month blocks. Here, I had some greater freedom, several year horizon to develop and pursue ideas and see them through. And so that was what brought me here, basically, Chris. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. It's fascinating. So I think we could go on to a few other questions unless we have anything from the audience. I don't see anything just yet. Oh, wait, I've just got one. So how has a biodigital twin been used so far, or what progress has been made?
Yes, this is a very good question. First, let me say that the inspiration for biodigital twin, I think, comes from digital twin. And folks who advance digital twin technology, at least in my understanding, are mostly people in commercial aviation to improve the management or operation and repair of engines, jet engines. And so that same approach is being applied to biology in the form of biodigital twin. Now, I've seen in my review many people who are using that term and are doing different things and have different takes on the actual meaning. Some is focused on, and I should say that most of the biodigital twins that I've seen focus on cardiovascular system. And I think that's natural since cardiovascular disease is still the #1 killer in the US. Most have focused on electrophysiology and modeling electrical conduction system. Some have focused on just instrumenting as many people as you can with sensors, external sensors, and monitoring activity and coming to some fundamental insights as to being able to predict using AI cardiovascular events. But our approach may be unique in wanting to build from the ground up physics-based or physiologically based models upon which we'll apply some extra tools like AI to give us additional insights. So our plan is to make use of directly observable information from the physiological system. Let's say it's cardiovascular. We want hemodynamic signals, pressure signals, waveforms, flow waveforms from patients in the acute care setting to build the internal physiological models. And then as we move away from acute care settings toward chronic care or wellness, then we can add on, the indirectly observed information that might come from sensors together with what we know about the physiology for each individual patient throughout that patient's history. And so that inspiration, I suppose, is based on my fundamental interest in physiology and the fact that I know that AI left unbounded can give ridiculous results if it's applied to systems that it has not seen before. And so the boundaries for understanding what is real in physiological systems, I think, comes from physiological models of the underlying mechanics and fluid hydraulics and so forth, if we're talking about the cardiovascular system.
How do you see the biodigital twin being used in the decades to come?
Yes. So first of all, I see it, and maybe most fundamentally, and obviously as a tool for precision medicine. That is the right therapy for the right patient at the right time. I see it as a mechanism for predictive maintenance, if you will. In the commercial aviation industry, they talk about predictive maintenance of a commercial engine, so that because you're always monitoring it and any kind of issues it experiences, then you can predict when that engine may need to be replaced or repaired. And I would say that if we update routinely a patient's biodigital twin, then we can predict when the patient may need to come in for, some kind of physical or some kind of likely therapeutic intervention or some kind of monitoring. And so you wouldn't have to just come on a particular fixed schedule, whether or not you need it. We could predict when you should come in for some kind of intervention. Another would be virtual clinical trials. Wouldn't it be great if instead of patients needed to be directly enrolled in clinical trials, their digital twins could be enrolled in virtual clinical trials? And we could make or test out things like the vaccines in a pandemic based on running lots of virtual clinical trials in advance and look at subgroups of virtual biodigital twins that respond to therapy and those that don't, and so forth. So as a mechanism to enrich actual clinical trials, to be able to run virtual clinical trials based on biodigital twins, I see as a potential application. And then I was talking to a friend of mine also from Auburn University 2 days ago. He called me up. He's a mechanical engineer. And he said, you could create virtual populations, virtual communities based on biodigital twins and put them in unusual environments such as on Mars and study how they would be affected by life on Mars, et cetera, et cetera. So I thought that was very interesting. And so we still have areas where we can dream.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm going to say that world you just described, certainly the world on Mars, but the one before of the virtual clinical trials and the testing of I imagine even new surgical techniques, things like that could be tested. That's an upgrade I'm looking forward to seeing someday. That's pretty amazing. I'm going to see if we do have another one. Okay, it says cardiovascular system depends also on physiological or mental factors. Are these included in the biodigital twin?
And so with particular reference to the cardiovascular biodigital twin, right now we have 2 generations that we're considering. One is kind of acute care setting only, and one is chronic care or preventive medicine setting. In that latter setting, the neural influences will be very significant. And in generation 2 of the cardiovascular biodigital twin, we intend to include autonomic nervous system because vagal sympathetic nerve activity and sympathetic nerve activity profoundly influence cardiovascular control, not just the mechanics of the heart itself and the contractility, but also the peripheral vasculature. As you know, if we have certain types of shock, we shunt blood away from the GI system. Actually, as we exercise vigorously, we shunt blood away from the GI system, which is not needed, and send it to the musculature, which is exercising. And so that's why you don't eat if you're about to do vigorous exercise. So surely the neural control of the circulation and of the heart will be the first element. But yes, psychosocial factors play a very significant role. And I mentioned earlier that we'd include things like behavior as part of it. So yes, definitely will be a part. The only issue is when to layer on which parts. And I can say right now for the cardiovascular system, we first layer on neural control of the circulation, sympathetic, parasympathetic activity, baroreceptor reflex, chemoreceptor characteristics before moving to higher order systems in the brain.
Okay. Got it. Sort of. I think everybody else does more than I do. All right. So I think we're gonna close out with one last question here. So this seems a little more general. Maybe people are curious about coming to someday work or be an intern at NTT Research. What's it like working at NTT Research?
I've been here since Valentine's Day. Literally, that was my first day of work this year, and most of the time since then I've spent working from home. And I have to confess, I like that. I do my best work from home. But it's been wonderful. The people are very nice, very friendly. The atmosphere is very stimulating. I'm working with, there are only several colleagues in my group. One, Dr. Tomoike, is a well-respected, well-known clinician and cardiologist, and he's been administrator of a number of hospital systems in Japan, so he's a very good manager. I'm working with another colleague, Kadooko-san, who is profoundly gifted in AI as well as in robotics and nonlinear control theory, and very friendly. And right now, my colleagues are all Japanese, but everyone is speaking English, and I really applaud them for that. And they're very bilingual. And, you know, the native language is easiest. And sometimes when I'm not around, I can hear Japanese going on. But as soon as I show up on the call, then it's English again, and it's great English. And so I'm just very humbled by the, as I've always been with my experience with Japanese culture. And I should say that my mentor for my PhD was, it was a Japanese lab at Hopkins, Dr. Kiichi Sugawa, cardiovascular dynamicist. Always working hard, very intelligent, but also at the same time very humble. And that humility and intelligence, that combination is something that I really love.
Fantastic. Well, Joe, thank you so much for joining us today and giving this a try and speaking to everybody about the work you're doing. It helps me to understand it more.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Everybody, thank you for joining today. I think that that'll be it. I encourage you to follow us on social media, and you can see what's going on.
Twitter is at NTT Research, and you can find us on LinkedIn at NTT Research as well.
How does change happen? How did a revelation by an 18th century English physician usher in the dawn of immunology and the modern vaccines that today protect everyone you know? How did two brothers with a boyhood dream to defy the laws of gravity launch an era of flight where 6 million of us now take to the skies every day? How did the need for collaboration at 4 leading universities set the cornerstone of the internet that today digitally connects us to the totality of human understanding? In the tradition of these breakthroughs, NTT Research tackles the most challenging scientific questions of our time in an effort to further humanity and the lives of us all. Every day, we strive to create a smarter world for the greater good. Because at NTT Research, our mission is not just to change the world,